Cassette number 6 in our seminar for literature evangelists is the most exciting of all. You will meet our overseas division publishing leaders and hear their thrilling stories of our bookmen's conquests on every continent. Your heart will burn within you anew to know that you are a part of this growing international army of over 8,000 literature evangelists. Like the astronauts, we're going to orbit the Earth in about an hour and introduce you to some of your stalwart fellow workers of other lands. First, we'll travel to London and let Elder John T. Knoper tell you about the work in the Northern Europe, West Africa Division. Elder Knoper learned literature evangelism as a teenager by guiding his blind colporteur father from home to home in the Netherlands. He has become a strong publishing leader in Holland and in the Congo, Niger, and Tanzania unions in Africa. Now he directs the publishing work from Iceland to the equator.
All over the world, this clock tower sound of London's Big Ben is well known, for it represents one of Great Britain's landmarks. To the Adventist family, this country is the seat of the Northern Europe West Africa Division, with its administration for 9 union publishing departments, 9 publishing houses, and several home health education offices and book and Bible houses. About 600 full-time and part-time literature evangelists, under the leadership of 29 publishing department secretaries, are moving with the printed page of God's message over the vast territory of this division, from the jungles of West Africa up to the snow and ice-covered tracts beyond the Arctic Circle. Our workers display a determination mingled with perseverance and faith in God, which is used in combination with the tactical know-how of Christian salesmanship. G.I. Irondu, Publishing Department Secretary for the Nigerian Union, had a letter containing a large order for books for his literature evangelist, which he wanted to place in the hands of his division Publishing Department Secretary, who had already boarded the plane which was at the point of take-off. Humanly speaking, it was impossible at this stage of the flight departure for this letter to be delivered. But Brother Irondu was determined, for he needed the books. He convinced those at the airport counter of the urgency of his mission. Calmly but resolutely he explained his plight to the immigration and customs officials, and he even succeeded in getting through the security police barrier. Running up to the plane, he frantically waved his letter. The pilot spotted him, opened the window of the plane, and reached down for the letter. At an altitude of 30,000 feet, the letter was delivered to the Division Publishing Department Secretary. Determination surmounts all barriers, bearing the way to success. A literature evangelist in Great Britain had difficulties in delivering his books to a certain family. The people were involved in spiritualism. The wife, however, wanted the books, but the husband forbid her to accept them. With the money in her hand, she said to the literature evangelist, "I don't know what to do." In the presence of her husband, the literature evangelist said to her, "But I know what you should do. You give me the money, and I'll leave you the books." And that's what the lady did. The literature evangelist went a step further, though. He arranged for Bible studies in this home, and today this family is rejoicing in Advent message as baptized members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. How different the story could have ended had the literature evangelist failed to adopt a positive approach to the prospect's dilemma. We have an area in our division territory which receives almost daily news coverage. However, radio and television news do not reveal what we are able to tell you, to the honor and glory of God. One of our literature evangelists working in Northern Ireland took a single order for 10 sets of the Bible story and 10 sets of My Bible Friends for immediate delivery. When the books were delivered to the literature evangelist, we were able to photograph him between the two piles of books. Whole counties in Northern Ireland are at present being influenced by Seventh-day Adventist literature, which is widely used by Roman Catholics and Protestants. Some of the spiritual leaders reporting on the enthusiasm of those who read our books have declared they don't like them, they love them. Others have said, "You have made a great impact on our schools with these books. They are in constant demand and are very precious." The literature ministry in Northern Ireland is not only fruitful financially, but also spiritually, for it still is one of the great soul-winning agencies. One of our literature evangelists in Denmark was asked by a prospect to go through her home and suggest where she should have books placed in her home. As a result, the literature workers sold her all the books we have in Danish. Not satisfied yet with the number of books, the prospect bought 2 copies of each title. Even in difficult areas, God still has a remnant, which could be classified with the 7,000 of Elijah's time, waiting for the message. God knows where these precious souls are, and he wants you and me to go out and through his Spirit be guided to these dwelling places. Brother E. Mottus from Finland witnessed 13 of his customers in 1 year step down into the baptistry and coming up as newborn children of God and happy members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. A lady literature evangelist in Finland was asked by her prospect to help her do some shopping. The literature evangelist was happy to do this, even though it meant the loss of precious hours in canvassing. When they returned to the prospect's home, she said, "I see that you are a real Christian and not doing this work for gain or money, but to help people. I would like to have 5 sets of the Bible story and will pay you cash." It pays to be an unselfish, dedicated literature minister. Have courage then, ye bearers of glad tidings to the world. Be faithful and dedicate your time and talents to the service of God. The servant of the Lord counsels us thus: consecrate yourself wholly to the work of God. He is your strength, and he will be at your right hand, helping you to carry on his merciful designs. To everyone who offers himself to the Lord for service withholding nothing is given power for the attainment of measureless results.
Next, let's race with the sun to the romantic lands of Inter-America. Luis Ramirez stepped out from a high-salaried position with a Pan-American industry to become a literature evangelist. He has never looked back. Elder Ramirez, tell us what's happening across Inter-America.
Greeting, friends, from Inter-America, from the growing army of literature evangelists south of the border. Nowadays, we have 2,000 strong in the literature ranks of Inter-America. You might be hearing about the big campaign in Inter-America to recruit 5,000 literature evangelists. The Lord has been blessing the appeal of our division president, Elder B.L. Archbold, calling for 5,000 literature evangelists to serve the Lord in Inter-America. I'd like to ask the question of you, friends. Do you really believe that our Lord wants 5,000 literature evangelists in Inter-America? Perhaps the following story can help you to decide. About 15 years ago, Lawson Sutherland was the lone but highly successful literature evangelist on the island of St. Vincent in the Caribbean. And he alone was responsible to take our publications to the 85,000 inhabitants of this small and somewhat impoverished Caribbean island, just 18 miles long by 11 miles wide. He was happy and satisfied in his work, but one day the Holy Spirit seemed to urge him. "Lawson, though you're working very diligently, you are only visiting a small fraction of the people every year. You really need help to evangelize St. Vincent, Lawson." And so Lawson Sutherland immediately thought of visiting his good friend in the church, Reynold Thomas. "Come, Brother Thomas, The Lord has given you wonderful talents. Let's serve together. Side by side, we can take the Lord's message to all the people of St. Vincent. Please come." And Brother Thomas was obedient to the call. So together they worked very successfully for about 2 years, until together they decided that they had made a miscalculation. They couldn't possibly do it alone. They needed a third partner to help them in the literature ministry. So after praying about the matter together, they decided to approach Brother Grafton Bacchus. "Dear Grafton, come and serve with us. You will have our fellowship in the company of holy angels in this blessed bookwork." And valiantly Brother Bacchus entered the bookwork, and he became the third very successful colporteur on the tiny island of St. Vincent. However, the day came when together the three decided that the island could really be blessed by the addition of a fourth member to the literature evangelist team. So they called a successful young farmer, Bertram Bacchus. "Come, Bertram, we will show you how to sow some real good seed, the gospel seed." Gladly he accepted the invitation to devote his talents to the service of the Master. Then the 4 colporteurs decided that the Lord really wanted to have a fifth. So they extended the call to a consecrated young man, Brother J. Thomas. "Join us, Brother Thomas. The Lord wants you in his service, and we will teach you how to be a successful literature evangelist." And now, the 5 literature evangelists on the island are calling the 6th, and soon they'll be calling the 7th. Now, dear listener, perhaps you are wondering how this constant recruiting has affected the deliveries and effectiveness of each of these individual colporteurs. You might even be tempted to think that they're getting in each other's way. I suppose that some people could rationalize that each individual colporteur would correspondingly reduce the average deliveries of each colporteur working on such a small island territory. But fortunately for the inhabitants of St. Vincent, our faithful literature evangelists on the island just don't reason that way. God has blessed their willingness to put the salvation of souls ahead of any other consideration. As a matter of fact, the leaders of the South Caribbean Conference, Elders S.L. Gadsby and E.F. de Gans, President and Publishing Secretary of the South Caribbean Conference, have reported to us that these literature evangelists have won an average of 50 souls annually in recent years. As a matter of fact, last year they were able to win 60 souls on the island of St. Vincent. Moreover, each of these brave bookmen has been able to increase individual deliveries year after year. Brother Sutherland and Reynold Thomas, who started to recruit 13 years ago, they have actually managed, with the Lord's help, to triple their individual deliveries. Now consider the statement that we find on page 85 of Colporteur Ministry. Quote, "The wider the circulation of our publications, the greater will be the demand for books that make plain the scriptures of truth." To some people, this statement would seem to be completely illogical. To them, it would seem far more reasonable to conclude that the more you sell, the more quickly you will saturate a given market, and by the same token, as you increase the number of bookmen in a limited area, the less each one will be able to deliver. But it bears repeating. On the island of St. Vincent, as elsewhere in Inter-America, we don't reason that way. Instead, we accept this inspired statement at its face value. And that's why our division president is calling now for 5,000 colporteurs in Inter-America. And so, we repeat the question to you, friend. Do you think our Heavenly Father wants 5,000 colporteurs in Inter-America? As we in Inter-America read and reread the Counsel and Colporteur Ministry, and then behold the plight of the multitudes around us, all of us, especially our consecrated literature evangelists, feel that we are compelled to respond to the call for 5,000 colporteurs in Inter-America. We feel that we must recruit as never before, while it is day. The night cometh. If you agree, friend, please say a short prayer for us right now, for those of us who are your brothers in the literature ministry in Inter-America. Thank you, friend. God bless you.
Now from the islands of the Caribbean, we travel quickly to the islands of the South Seas and to the interesting lands of Australia and New Zealand. Elder John W. Nixon has given his entire life to the publishing ministry. He served successful terms as publishing leader in both Southern Asia and the Northern Europe divisions. Tell us, Elder Nixon, how it's going down under.
Inspiration declares, when successful, the literature evangelist should take no glory to himself, for his success is due to the working of God's angels upon the heart. I am absolutely convinced that my angel does not assist me in my work, said Lee Hersey, literature evangelist, North New Zealand Conference, but I assist my angel. He does everything for me. He leads me to the genuine families, then he takes over, and his heavenly influence makes them buy our books. In fact, without him, I could not do anything like what happened to me today. I moved into a new area, into a street called a close, which is really a no-through road. It was a very untidy, poor area, and looked a hard and hopeless place. So much so that I said to my angel, "You will have to lead me here. Please lead me to where someone will love and appreciate our books and be able to purchase them." I stood there for a moment, and then, in a very clear, distinct voice, my angel said, "Go straight down the street and turn right." I was delighted, because I had never had this happen to me just like this before. I did as I was told, and as I walked down the street and turned right into a dead-end street, there, right in front of me, was a nice little home, clean as a new pin, and surrounded by a nicely kept garden. The door was opened by a very gracious little lady, who immediately asked me inside. Her little home was spotless and clean. As I gave my canvas, she was deeply interested and listened with hushed attention to every word I said. When I finished, she said, "You have been sent to me. Just the other night, my husband said, we must buy some good books for our children. So we went downtown the next day and saw a set of 4 books, but they were just fantasy stories, with only a few pictures, and we were not impressed. Besides, they cost $90 for the set of 4. But these books are beautiful. I have never seen such lovely books. My children and my husband will be thrilled with them. Please leave them with me today." My angel and I left that home singing praises together, because we had found a precious jewel among the rubble. This is just one of the many similar experiences which our literature evangelists are having around the vast Australasian division. Our literature evangelists scattered across this sparsely populated area of land and sea greet you in the name of our captain, who has never lost a battle and never forsaken a faithful literature evangelist. All over this great land of Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, and the islands of the South Seas, our workers are finding gems for God's kingdom as they work in cooperation with heavenly angels. They are happy to be part of the great army of literature evangelists around the world, and are of good courage as they assist in the fulfillment of that inspired statement. In a large degree, through our publishing houses, is to be accomplished the work of that other angel who comes down from heaven with great power and lightens the earth with his glory.
A quick flight from Melbourne brings us to Singapore and the fabulous Far East. Elder S.D. Pangborn is leading out in an aggressive program. He was a successful publishing leader in Nebraska and the Korean Union, and now leads the largest group of literature evangelists in the world. Woody, tell us about the unprecedented publishing exploits in the Far East.
Greetings from the ever-increasing army of now over 2,500 literature evangelists proclaiming the gospel throughout the fabulous Far East. Truly they are faithfully doing the work of that other angel come down from heaven having great power, and the earth was lightened by his glory. What a thrill it is to see the united efforts of literature evangelists, pastors, and public evangelists working together, bringing in a harvest of souls beyond our highest expectations. What an encouragement to see the light of truth penetrating the darkness of the strange, mystic religions and the enchanting cultures of the Orient. You hear singing in the background the Philippine publishing house Madrigal Singers, who recently lifted their voices in praise along with the over 1,600 literature evangelists who convened recently at a teacher's camp in the cool mountain city of Baguio, Philippines. This was the largest convention of literature evangelists ever held anywhere in the world. What an experience. What an inspiration to fellowship for nearly 1 week with this happy, enthusiastic group. While there, I met Brother and Sister Pagwibo and their son, all literature evangelists, who told me their experience. It is a rather sad story, yet conveys the courage and the devotion that is typical of so many of our literature evangelists laboring in some of the very difficult, even war-torn areas of the Far East. Benny, the second son of Brother Pagwibo, was canvassing with 3 companions in Mindanao near the city of Davao. As they went to deliver some of their books in a barrio of Caliel, Benny reminded his companions of the wonderful privilege and honor to be in the service of Christ. As they approached the barrio, they separated and proceeded 2 by 2. Filled with enthusiasm to deliver all of the books to the people before having supper, they hastened their steps. As darkness was approaching, they were met by 2 men. Benny very courteously greeted them, "Good evening." In answer to his friendly greeting and without provocation, a 2-edged dagger about 6 inches long was suddenly thrust into his body. The assailants then fled from the bleeding victim and his companion. Although seriously wounded, with the help of his fellow worker he was able to make it to the nearest hospital. A medical examination revealed 2 wounds in the stomach and 4 in the large intestines. His mother, older brother, and friends, upon hearing word of the tragedy, gathered to pray for his recovery. He assured his mother and brother, who were constantly by his side, that he felt no pain from the time he had been stabbed. But, in spite of the hope and prayers of his family and friends, he finally breathed his last and laid down his life in service to await the return of his master. But his blood was not to be shed in vain. He seemed to realize he was dying, and during his last moments he asked his brother to deal gently with the culprits. He said, "I love them and have prayed that God will forgive them." He also urged his brother to take up the literature ministry and continue the work he had learned to love so well. In response to his earnest appeal, not only his brother but his mother also joined the father, who was already a literature evangelist, to hasten the day when Jesus will return and they will be reunited with Benny. Because of Benny's great love and Christ-like attitude before he died, many were impressed. Bible studies were begun in the area. A branch Sabbath school was started. Converts were baptized into the church. Brother and Sister Pagwibo and their oldest son faithfully continued to spread the gospel through the printed page. What an inspiration it was to hear them, with tears streaming down their radiant faces, rededicate their lives in service to God before that great throng of literature evangelists who went back to their fields of labor more determined than ever to press forward in the work that God has committed to them. Vietnam, although the peace agreement has been signed, bullets are still flying. True, there has been a welcome degree of moderation in the fighting, yet our literature evangelists still face many difficulties as they travel from place to place, carrying the word of life and peace to the war-wearied people of that war-torn land. Today, 17 of our literature evangelists have left their families to go out to their work never to return. In spite of these difficulties, by the power of God, they seem to rise above the problems and carry on courageously with a very progressive program. They are a living example of faith and courage and dedication that inspires literature evangelists throughout the world. The literature evangelist of Vietnam would like to express a very sincere thank you to fellow literature evangelists and publishing leaders the world over who recently gave such a generous sacrificial offering to help bring relief to those who suffered so much during heavy fighting in 1972. In the neighboring country of Thailand, our literature evangelists do not face the physical dangers as are faced in Vietnam, but it takes no less faith and dedication to break through the spiritual walls of Buddhism. How I wished I had time to relate the exciting experiences that our literature evangelists are having in places like the South China Island Union Mission, including Hong Kong and Taiwan, and our northernmost unions of Japan and Korea, where the roots of Buddhism also run deep. What an inspiration it would be if you could meet a few of our over 400 enthusiastic literature evangelists of Indonesia, where the work is progressing with leaps and bounds under the blessings of God in that predominantly Muslim country. Fellow literature evangelists, this old sin-sick world is writhing in the convulsions of sin, struggling for its last breath. What a privilege and responsibility is yours and mine to hurry from place to place as God's ambassadors with a message of hope and relief to those who will only reach out and grasp it. Let us each rededicate our lives in united service, hastening the day when this message of hope will become a reality, and those who have been faithful, some even unto death, will be ushered into a never-ending era of peace, security, and happiness.
Our orbit speeds us quickly now over the teeming millions of Southern Asia. The life of our publishing leader here has been a series of exciting miracles. Formerly a Royal Air Force bomber navigator, later a tea plantation manager in India, then literature evangelist and publishing leader in Britain. Now he leads the forces of literature workers in Southern Asia. Here now is Elder Kernow.
The work in Southern Asia was pioneered by two literature evangelists as they landed at Madras in 1892. Later, literature evangelists pioneered the work in Burma, Sri Lanka, and what is now Pakistan. 80 years later, literature evangelists are still pioneering the work in large areas of this vast division of nearly 750 million people. In the Indian state of Mysore, there are 19 districts, with work in only 11, except for the Kolkata ministry. Local Mission Publishing Secretary K.M. Sunanda was able to report at the recent constituency meeting that today no district has been unentered. Every village, every town and every city has witnessed to the Advent message through the printed page. With adventurous spirit, the regular and student literature evangelists launch out into the interior areas where no other Adventist worker has been. A similar story can be told of the states of Andhra, Orissa, the Gujarat, Maharashtra, and many others. A young literature evangelist, M.G. Raja Singh, working in a rural part of his territory in the Tamil Nadu state of South India, was asked by a family in one village to hold some meetings. Later, he asked his church pastor to take over the interest. 34 people were baptized. A boy from another village was visiting some relatives, and he attended some of Raja Singh's meetings. When he returned home, he told his village about the meetings. They asked Brother Raja Singh to come to their village too and tell them the Advent message. As a result, 67 persons were baptized, and so Brother Raja Singh became a centurion soul winner as, in that 1 year, he was able to report 101 baptisms. Another literature evangelist who gives a portion of his time to conduct lay efforts is Brother Davidanam, working in the Andhra section of the Central India Union. Brother Davidanam began his work as a literature evangelist in 1958, and from the beginning he has been an earnest seeker for souls, often giving much of his time in conducting village efforts. Through the years, Brother Davidanam has won 128 souls for Christ and has helped to raise up 3 new churches. Currently, this soul-winning brother is working in Mahabub Nagar, a village in which he expects a rich harvest for his master. travelling to the beautiful evergreen state of Kerala, with its hundreds and thousands of waving coconut palm trees, we would find in the suburbs of Trivandrum, the state capital, a very energetic literature evangelist who every year carries forward a strong lay evangelistic program in addition to his full-time canvassing. Though often faced with severe opposition, Brother J. Benjamin fearlessly presses successfully towards his goal of more souls for his beloved Master. Late one evening, at the close of one of his meetings at Pangode, Brother Benjamin and his daughter were looking for a taxi, since the last bus had already gone, when a rowdy group who had been trying to disrupt his meetings gathered around them. They had been drinking. Just then a taxi came along and our brother hailed it. As the taxi slowed down, the mob threatened to kill the taxi driver if he tried to pick them up. The taxi sped away. Brother Benjamin prayed earnestly for God's help and protection. Another taxi came along. This time Brother Benjamin was known to the driver, and sensing that Brother Benjamin and his daughter were in trouble, he courageously stopped in spite of dire threats from the mob. Our bookman and his daughter jumped in and the taxi sped off as the mob tried to block the road. A few days later, the local witch doctor, who was the leader of the troublemakers, was killed in a motorbike accident. Brother Benjamin cancelled his meeting for that night and helped with the funeral. A week later, another troublemaker was stabbed to death, while another committed suicide. A great fear fell upon the people, and from that time on our faithful book evangelist had no further trouble at his meetings, and he had the joy of seeing 32 people baptized into God's remnant church, and a beautiful church was established. Since entering the literature ministry in 1967, Brother Benjamin has brought 188 precious souls to the feet of Jesus Christ, and has raised up 4 new churches at Munamud, Pangodi, Enikara and Payad. Many other thrilling exploits for the Master that we could tell, but we must let you listen to equally thrilling experiences from other parts of the world. Between 1/5 and 1/4 of the world's population throng the city streets, the highways and the byways of our division, locked in the darkness of Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Mohammedanism, animism, yes, and apostate Christianity too. From these teeming millions, Sister White has said, a firmament will be saved into God's kingdom. Please pray that many, many more bookmen will join the colporteur ranks, that the literature ministry may fulfill its vital role in the finding of this firmament.
Next, we visit the ancient lands of the Bible. The challenge of 150 million Muslims, Egypt, Ethiopia, East Africa, and the countries of the Afro-Mideast Division. Pastor Rudy H. Henning has been a successful publishing leader in Germany and in the Tanzania Union of East Africa. Our Africans there appropriately named him Bwana Moto Moto. Moto is the Swahili word for fire. Elder Henning, tell us about the fire you are spreading all around the Afro-Mideast Division.
Forward Thrust means coordinated evangelism in the Afro-Mideast Division. Ministers, nurses, teachers, youth, and literature evangelists have joined together to add new chapters to the books of Acts.
كثيرا اذكروا الله ذكرا كثيرا وسبحوا
150 million Muslims obey to the call to prayer 5 times a day. Oh, what a longing for truth! Although small in number, our literature evangelists are there to meet this challenge. Our student literature evangelists travel thousands of miles to serve in the widespread countries of the Middle East. One of our students, tall in stature, strong in faith, and dedicated to the literature ministry, had soon exhausted his total book supply. This didn't stop his work. He went on to collect subscriptions for our magazines, the finest in the Middle East. People signed up for 2, 3, 5, and even 10 years. Did he reach his scholarship? No. He went far beyond it. In one summer, he earned enough money to attend school for 3 years. Meet Brother Moses El-Madjan. For many years his business was booming and made him a well-known man on the island of Cyprus. But this didn't satisfy him. He sold his business, attended the Middle East College to prepare for the ministry. How he enjoyed his service. One day, his wife felt the call and joined the literature ministry. Soon, Brother Moses El-Madjan requested the committee to release him from ministerial work so that he may serve together with his wife as literature evangelist. They have remarkable success. Africa, once the dark continent, has accepted the light of the gospel. What a transformation we see today. Our literature evangelists are setting new records. Joseph Boulangila was a member of the Catholic Church. In 1963, a literature evangelist knocked on his door and sold him the book, God's Answers, in Swahili. Finally, in March 1970, he was baptized. Already 2 months later, he joined the literature ministry. He had a burden for his own family and was happy to see 8 of them baptized. The Forward Thrust program was introduced to him, and soon he conducted his first literature evangelist effort. 28 people accepted the truth. This wasn't enough, and soon he was in the midst of another evangelistic campaign that convinced 45 people to stand for the truth. Brother Joseph felt the urgency of the message and led another 45 people to Jesus in a third campaign. 115 precious souls are longing to be baptized because of the dedicated service of one literature evangelist. Sister Lillian Ngaruia, a mother of 4 children, dedicated her spare time to the literature ministry. Employed by the Kenya government, burdened with the duties of a housewife, she found enough time to bring the printed page into the homes. In only 8 months, she delivered literature for 67,000 shillings, and 5 of her customers were baptized. In 1972, she set new records and delivered literature for 96,000 shillings. The profit equals the income of about 8 pastors. The husband of Mrs. Ngaruia, a layman, has an active part in the work of his wife. She finds the searching souls, and he gives the Bible studies. As a result, 16 precious souls were baptized in 1972. Today, Sister Ngaruia is a full-time literature evangelist, being more successful than ever before. Nearly 600 literature evangelists in East Africa are determined to sell for 2 million shillings truth-filled literature this year. That calls for an increase of 26%, but their actual gain so far is 51.8%. And how about soul winning? The Afro-Mid-East Division Publishing Department reported in just 7 months a gain of 453 souls over the same period of last year. That is an increase of 155%.
The great continent of Africa compels us to turn southward to the vast territories of the Trans-Africa Division. From the North Congo, or Zaire, to the city of Cape Town on the tip of the continent, Division Publishing Secretary Walter Ruba directs a dedicated band of literature workers. Walter Ruba has been a successful publishing leader in California, Kentucky, and in the South Africa Union. Tell us what's happening today in the great Trans-Africa Division.
The rhythmic beat of these talking drums brings you greetings from your fellow literature evangelist of the Trans-Africa Division, stretching from the equator to the Cape of Good Hope. Over 100 years ago, the sound of similar drums may have announced the coming of David Livingstone to a remote village of our territory. He saw the smoke of 1,000 villages where the gospel of Jesus Christ had not yet been preached. In 1973, over 300 literature evangelists are still following the trails of David Livingstone on foot, on bicycles, on motorbikes, and cars. Much has been accomplished in lightening our part of the once called Dark Continent, yet much more needs to be done now. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord of hosts. With one contact, the Spirit of the Lord can reach more hearts than we can ever imagine. This is what happened this year in Cape Town, South Africa. Sister J. Daniba of Johannesburg attended our Literature Evangelist Institute at Helderberg College. Let me tell you the story in her own words. While still in Cape Town after the 1972 Institute, I visited some of my relatives where I met a lady, and I promised to visit her in her home. When I called on her, I told her of the soon coming of Jesus, and, because I always carry with me wherever I travel my colporteur ammunition, I introduced to her the Climax of the Ages, our edition of great controversy. She was very interested and impressed with my visit, and the work I was doing. She invited me to come back to her home again the following evening to see her husband, who is a lay preacher. I accepted the invitation. When I called that evening, the husband was at home anxiously awaiting my visit. He informed me that his wife appreciated my previous visit and conversation. He asked me many questions which I was able to answer with the help of the Holy Spirit. He also wanted to know my age. I told him I was 67. He listened very attentively and requested that I leave the book with him. I called again the next evening for my book. He asked me a few more questions before handing it over to me. He wanted to know where I got this book, and why it was that he had never seen such good literature before. In fact, he appeared to be a little sarcastic at first, and I asked if there was anything wrong with the Climax of the Ages, and if he had found anything contrary to his Bible knowledge. He then admitted that he was very pleased with the book, and wished to know why it was not more widely sold to the public. He also mentioned that he was pleased with my visit and the good work I was doing. He placed an order and asked me to call again the next evening, which I consented to do. When I arrived at his home the following evening, I was ushered into the living room. As I entered, I came face to face with a well-built man with a long beard. I prayed silently for help to meet the situation properly. The long-bearded man introduced himself and commenced to question me as to who I was and where I got the books I was selling. I was more than surprised when he told me that he was a minister and a leader of thousands of people. He also stated that he was responsible for 29 churches and 29 other ministers. When he told me that he wanted 29 Climax of the Ages, one for each of his ministers, I was speechless. I was really stunned. I could hardly believe that the man meant what he said. But he was ready to pay for them immediately. I told him I stayed in Johannesburg, 1,000 miles away, and had only a sample copy. Old lady, he continued, I can send you a check to cover the cost of 29 Climax of the Ages, and as soon as you receive the money, please forward the books. Will you do this great favor for me? I promised that I would. 4 days after my arrival at Johannesburg, the check arrived, and I was privileged to buy the books, which were sent to him by car. As soon as he received the books, he telephoned me and thanked me for giving this matter my immediate attention. This is an indication of how the Lord is able to bless and cut short his work in righteousness. His business upon this earth will never be a failure. Soon the truth of his church will triumph, and those whose hearts are full of love for the truth and faith will triumph with the truth. Again the flame of truth has been kindled in the hearts of many people through literature. In the Trans-Africa Division, we believe that the Lord has set before us an open door, and no man can shut it. He has sent his angel before our workers to keep them in the way and bring them to the places he has prepared for them. We are happy that we can unite our voices in prayer and thanksgiving with God's literature evangelists around the world. May the Lord bless every one of you in a special way.
Quickly now across the South Atlantic to Brazil, Argentina, and the other colorful countries of South America. One of their own native sons, Pedro Camacho, leads the aggressive army of literature evangelists in South America. We are constantly hearing of miracles from the printed page in those interesting Catholic lands. Senor Pedro Camacho, speak to us in Portuguese and tell us about the exploits of the South American literature workers.
De parte da divisão sul-americana, saudamos a todos os colportores mundiais.
On the part of the South American Division, we extend our warmest Christian greetings to all the literature evangelists.
O que mais tem nos inspirado nesta grandiosa obra da colportagem
That which has most inspired us in this blessed work of the literature ministry
é levar esta mensagem a todas as almas que estão famintas pela verdade.
is the privilege of taking this blessed message to all the hungry souls that are about us.
E ao lermos o grande livro O Conflito dos Séculos,
And as we read the great book, the great controversy,
descobrimos que por meio de suas profecias, este livro deve ser levado a todas as gentes.
we know that the prophecies of this book must be taken to the multitudes.
Então tomamos uma decisão de fazermos um alvo de vendermos 1 milhão de exemplares deste maravilhoso livro.
And so in the South American Division, we have proposed that we will take 1 million copies of this great book to the peoples of South America during the course of this quinquennium.
Com isto estamos mobilizando todos os colportores para vender este livro.
And in Brazil, in the course of 16 months, 160,000 copies of the great controversy have been delivered.
Em toda a divisão, já mais de 200.000 exemplares.
And in the entire division, more than 200,000 copies have been sold.
Temos colportor analfabeto chamado Antônio Zusa.
We have an illiterate colporter, Antonio Zusa, working,
É grande colportor missionário.
and he's a great missionary literature evangelist.
Ele decidiu vender exclusivamente este livro.
He decided to sell this book exclusively,
Já vendeu mais de 7.000 exemplares.
and he has sold now more than 7,000 copies of the great controversy.
Ganhou 235 almas para Jesus.
And as a consequence, 235 souls have been won to the message.
Este homem, ao fazer a sua apresentação,
This literature evangelist, on making his canvas,
é verdadeiro estudo bíblico que ele dá ao cliente.
presents a true Bible study to the people.
Ele termina a sua apresentação dizendo:
He concludes his presentation by saying,
Esta, quem sabe, será a última oportunidade que o senhor terá em sua vida de receber uma mensagem de Deus.
"This may be the very last opportunity that you will have to receive such a message from God,
Logo virá o tremendo tempo de angústia.
because soon we will have a terrible time of trouble."
E este livro apresenta a última mensagem de Deus.
And so this book will bring to you the last message of salvation from God.
E eu sei que o senhor deseja pertencer ao povo de Deus
I know that you, sir, want to belong to the people of God
e alcançar o grandioso triunfo final,
and reach that ultimate triumph,
onde viverá eternamente o senhor e a sua família no lar celestial.
so that you and your dear family can live together in God's kingdom.
Portanto, este livro vai lhe trazer a verdadeira felicidade.
And so this book will indeed bring to you true happiness.
E com estas palavras, ele impressiona o cliente.
And so with these words, of course, he impresses the client.
Dia o diretor estava procurando este colportor na cidade onde ele trabalhava.
And one day the publishing secretary went to seek out this co-porter to join him in a day's work.
E não o encontrava.
And he was not able to locate him.
E afinal o encontrou hospedado na casa do bispo daquela cidade.
But finally he did locate him. He was staying at the home of the local Roman Catholic bishop.
Ele, ao chegar à casa do bispo para oferecer os livros,
He had come to the home of the bishop to offer the books.
o bispo lhe perguntou: onde o senhor está hospedado?
And the bishop asked him, after seeing the books, "Where are you staying?"
No hotel.
"In the hotel?"
Então o bispo disse: não, missionário como o senhor deve se hospedar na minha casa.
"No, sir. A missionary such as you should not be staying in a hotel. You must come and live with me here in my home.
Eu tenho quarto aqui reservado para os missionários.
I have a room here in my residence, especially for missionaries such as yourself."
E o colportor ficou em sua casa hospedado durante 15 dias.
And so for 15 days, while he was working there in that community, the co-porter was staying in the home of the bishop.
Não só dormia, como comia lá na
Not
própria
only did
casa
he
do
sleep
bispo.
there, but of course he ate there in the home of the bishop.
Este homem está fazendo trabalho maravilhoso em toda parte.
This co-porter, Antonio Azusa, is doing a marvelous work.
Ele é grande missionário inspirador nas igrejas.
And he's a great missionary. Even within our churches, he inspires the people with his experiences.
Em toda parte ele é convidado para contar as suas lindas experiências de
And wherever he goes,
conversões.
he's invited to come and tell his inspiring stories.
Meus queridos colportores,
And so, dear brother co-porters,
esta mensagem deve ser levada a todos os lares.
this message must be taken to all the multitudes.
Apelamos aos colportores de todo o mundo
And we appeal to all of our brother co-porters in the world
que levem o livro Conflitos dos Séculos e ofereçam em cada casa que visitar.
that they take this book, The Great Controversy, and offer it in every home.
Backtracking now just a few thousand miles, we cross over to the Cameroons and the French-speaking territories of Africa, Madagascar, and then northward to all the colorful lands of southern Europe, Spain, Italy, Greece, Austria, Yugoslavia, Germany, and Switzerland. Capable Division Publishing Secretary Eduardo Nani is of French-Swiss background, but speaks fluent German, English, Italian, and some Spanish. He has to do it to be able to give instruction and sell books in all these languages. Elder Nani, give us some sights and sounds of the Euro-Afro Division.
This is Edward Nenny speaking from the office of the Euro-Africa Division in Bern, Switzerland. The background music which you hear is that of 4 Swiss Alp horns whose echoes delightfully call back through the high mountain passes. The Euro-Africa Division embraces a vast territory of 5,000 miles from east to west, from Rodriguez Island to the Azores, and 7,000 miles from north to south, from Germany to Mozambique in Africa. What a tremendous challenge for evangelism! We must reach 422 million souls living in 56 countries in Europe and in Africa, plus the small country of Israel and several islands in the Indian Ocean. These peoples speaks 46 languages and numerous dialects. Making the task even more difficult is the fact that there is no lack of all established religions. The Jewish faith, Muslims, the large number of Christian communities, Catholic, Orthodox and Protestants, not forgetting the primitive animists in Africa and modern pagans living in the jungles of our large cities. J.N. Andrews established the publishing work in Europe on a solid base in 1876 with the founding of the French Signs of the Times. Then in 1886 he opened the Polyglot Bookstore in Basel, Switzerland, our first publishing house. The first Seventh-day Adventist in Europe, Jean-David Gemet, also became the first literature evangelist in 1886. He was a Waldensian from the Piedmont Valley. Brother Gemet worked until he was 80 years of age. Now you hear Swiss yodeling in the background. Today the publishing department is active in 36 of the 56 countries in this division, but we have not even entered some countries. Literature evangelists are, in fact, pioneering the way in several African states. This division operates 16 publishing houses with 300 employees. In 1972, $6,500,000 worth of literature was sold, 65% by our 600 colporteurs and 35% by our members. But the task is great. We should have at least 3,000 literature evangelists to reach all the people in our territory. To meet this challenge, we are putting forth a special effort to recruit new workers. There is an awakening in Spain. During a recruiting campaign earlier this year, 50 people responded to the call. Every summer, from 80 to 100 Spanish students enter the publishing ministry. One student colporteur, Fernando Cadilla, sold $19,000 worth of literature in 524 hours, and his colleague Antonio Diestre sold more than $16,000 in 394 hours. The best sales records have been set by regular colporteurs in Germany, where R. Kepler delivered $32,600 worth of literature last year. In Switzerland too, results have been excellent. Yogi Bao sold $31,000 worth of books. The largest sale made by one person last year was that of Joël Gauthier of France, a former champion cyclist. At an electrical business house in Bordeaux, he took an order for 134 sets of 6 large books each, the sale totaling $8,200. If you were to place these 200,000 pages contained in these 804 volumes, one on the other, you would have a column equal in height to that of a 12-story building. But the goal of our literature workers is, first of all, to win souls. For that reason they have chosen this work. Brother Georges Buatois founded a church in France and led some 60 souls to the Adventist faith. He also interested 6 of them in literature evangelism, and today they are successful workers. In Cameroon, Africa, Benjamin Medjo founded 2 churches and led 40 souls to Christ. His colleague Jean Bock won 30 new believers. I could also talk at length about the socialist countries where we have not been able to organize our work on a house-to-house basis. In Yugoslavia, however, of the 500 to 600 new members added to the church each year, 1/3 come into contact with our message through the printed page. Now you can hear a Yugoslavian group singing the Waldensian Kolporter. In closing, I would like to relate a recent experience. Angelika Meyer of Germany is both deaf and dumb. This attractive young lady had a good job in a large automobile factory. Urged on by a voice speaking to her, she was convinced that she should become a literature evangelist. Without saying anything to anyone, she gave her employer notice and presented herself to the publishing secretary in Hanover. It was an embarrassing situation, but after a great deal of prayer, Brother Carlwhite was impressed that he should permit Angelika to sell our magazines. He made up a special prospectus explaining on the first page that Angelika is a deaf mute and the reason for her visit. As she makes her presentation, Angelika turns the pages and shows her magazines at the right moment. On the last page, she tells the people in writing, "It is because my faith in Jesus had made me so happy that I present these publications to you today. I hope you like them. Thank you. Our young colporteur has had extraordinary success. Thanks to this method of working and to the Lord's blessing, she sells from 100 to 200 papers a day. God has wonderfully blessed our faithful literature evangelists and the work they are doing throughout our large field. But we are certain that He has even greater things in store for us."
Bookman friends, we march in God's army. It is truly a great army. It is a great family, a great calling. There is no other work in the world where you could do more good or reach more people for heaven. Keep marching forward with these valiant workers of every land. Soon every soul will have been reached.